Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Monster Hunter Wilds. And boy does it feel nice to say this. We just got a ton of brand new information regarding the game's combat, focus mode and how everything is going to work out, as well as a closer look as to how the Greatsword is going to work. There's also a bunch of hidden details that I managed to spot throughout these trailers that I'm going to be analyzing, so I hope to showcase some things that you didn't spot when you were first watching these. So you are first going to see my initial reaction to one of these trailers, followed my in-depth analysis. And then we'll move on to the second trailer, and at the end we're going to cover the Greatsword in more detail. I hope you are all as excited as I am for Monster Hunter Wilds. We've got a ton of news around the corner, especially with Gamescom happening so soon. So with that being said, let's get started. So we're going to start with the basics mechanics overview trailer. Hunters have two weapon states, sheath and drawn. When your weapon is sheathed, you can move faster and use items. When your weapon is drawn, your movement is limited, but your weapon can be used to attack. And then we have the Sacred, our companion. The Sacred is a creature that can be mounted, providing you with the means of travel. Oh, I like the animations on that thing. Oh, we actually get to see the HUD here. What is that? Is that a Kelpie? I can't quite see what that is being targeted for the quest. But here you can see that the map is all in 3D and everything. Oh, never mind, that's the new monster. While mounted, you can recover your health. Naturally, you can also sharpen. Yep, there it is. Gather useful items. And you'll even gain the ability to switch between a primary and secondary weapon. And then we get to the Slinger, and I actually want to point out, here we get a close-up, just how barely visible the Hook Slinger is in this game, because I felt as though the Slinger in World kind of ruined the fashion for a lot of sets. So it's cool that here you're going to have a Slinger that is barely noticeable. It allows you to fire various types of ammo that you can gather in the environment. Ooh, that looks like a Crystal Burst. There you go, flinch the monster. That's a flash pod. And I'm very happy with this feature of being able to collect items from the environment with your Slinger from a distance. And naturally you can also use it to make rocks fall down and everything else with the environmental hazards. You can use it to pick up herds while you are on top of the Sacred. All in all, there wasn't a ton of detail in this trailer, but there is a couple of things that I want to point out. Obviously, these mechanics are more of a breakdown for newer players. We as people that play Monster Hunter naturally know all of this, but I do want to slow down this portion of the video right here, where we do get to see a portion of the hunt, and actually, we get the new logo for starting a quest that says Begin Quest. I believe in the previous games it was Quest Start, but that's just a very small detail. We also get to see the location that we are in, the Windward Plains, and here is the icon for the monster that we're going to be hunting, with naturally the guild icon indicating that it is pinned and that is the target of our quest. And I'm guessing that this number is the distance between the hunter and the monster. Now here on the bottom left you can see the new in-depth minimap that is going to have a 3D loadout. It's something that I talked about in my previous video, and you can also see that it has the number 7 indicating that Monster Hunter Wilds is still going to have segmented areas, although it's going to have a much more open world feel to it. And as you can see, whenever the player starts rotating the camera, you can really see the 3D topography starting to come in, and I think that's going to make things a lot easier to track, because in Monster Hunter World sometimes it would be difficult to notice whether a monster or a certain material was on the upper or the lower floors. I also want to point out that this location looks very cool, much more of a tight, neat location, kind of like a very small cave that has these branching paths, so it's not necessarily going to be all open wide areas like we saw in some of the previous trailers. Other than that, there's really not much more to point out in this trailer, so let's move on to the Focus Mode trailer. Look at that, Focus Mode. Focus Mode allows you to carefully aim your attacks or guards, and you can see the reticle on screen like we discussed in one of my previous videos. Ooh, was he able to change? That is a TCS, he's able to change direction in the middle of a TCS. That is insane. Okay, let's continue. Attacks or guards you perform in Focus Mode will be directed where the camera is facing. That is pretty cool. While hunting, attacking the same parts of a monster continuously may create wounds on that body part. Oh, and you can see it right there. Hold on, let me go back a little bit. You can see that whenever he lands that attack, you can see that gash right there, that wound, that has been marked, although it may not be very easy to spot on some monsters. But then the hunter is going to go into focus mode and you're going to be able to spot it much more easily. It's going to be highlighted. Attacks to wounds will deal more damage than normal. Oh, and here you can even see that it has the marker, the same iconography as whenever you attack a tenderized part in Monster Hunter World, indicating that, of course, you're going to deal more damage. Now, these may not necessarily be the actual numbers when the game fully releases, but if we do the math here, hitting the monster on a wounded part is going to deal approximately 23.6% more damage than if you were to hit the monster on a non-wounded part. Numbers like these can change before the game's release, but at least this can give us an idea of how impactful this is going to be. Focus mode will also highlight any weak points that the monster has exposed. I wonder what they mean by that. And then we have the focus strikes. Oh, was that a gun lance? Focus strikes are special attacks that deal extra damage to wounds and weak points. Look at that beautiful attack. Beautiful heavy bowgun, and that is it for the trailer. But there's a lot of tiny things to point out, so let's go back a little bit. So I thought that this part at the very beginning was very interesting. You see that Hunter is going for a level 3 charge, but because he uses focus mode, he is able to completely reposition himself to be able to face the monster and actually land the attack. This is a massive deal for Greatsword users because the problem with the weapon is that it is so slow that sometimes it's hard to land it against a lot of monsters. Now I also want to point out this sword and shield move right there, where the hunter slides down and then continues to hit the monster from the back, and you get to see an HD shot of Shatacabra's butt. Now correct me if I am wrong, but I am pretty sure that this slide right here is not being done because the hunter is in a slope, because I don't feel like the environment here is quite enough for the hunter to perform a slide like you can do in Monster Hunter World and Rise, for example, and this is certainly not the advancing slash. So I think that this move is straight up something that you can perform in Monster Hunter Frontier, and correct me if I'm wrong. I also think that this move has iframes, and I also just noticed this other move right here where the hunter, after doing a basic combo, kind of strafes and sidesteps to the side and continues the aggression. An overall very fluid sequence that is a perfect identity for the sword and shield, being a very fun weapon to use that is all about evading attacks and continuing the aggression, and I'm honestly very excited to give all of this a shot. Now here we also get to see that the hunter is going to use focus mode to be able to change the direction of the guard. Now this is something that you can easily do already in the games. You can quite simply tilt the analog stick into the direction that you want to block and you'll be able to block from that direction. But I guess that focus mode is going to help with doing that more easily. And again, we get to see that the hunter is going to be able to create that gash on the monster by repeatedly attacking the same spot, although whenever he goes into focus mode, that is going to be highlighted. Now, just because it is highlighted, you're not necessarily going to be dealing more damage, but you can use focus strikes while you are in focus mode to deal even more damage. Because if we come over here to the website under the focus mode section, and if we scroll down here to the focus strike, it states special attacks available during focus mode. The focus strikes will deal massive damage when connecting with a wound or a weak point. And as you can see, they are all highlighted red right there. Hitting a wound with a focus strike will destroy the wound, dealing massive damage and stunning the monster. Now the way that this part is phrased leads me to believe that it is going to work very similarly to how the curio spots worked for Sunbreak, where the monsters would have a glowing part on them where you would hit that part to deal more damage, and upon hitting it repeatedly, it would create this additional burst of damage where the monster would be knocked out, but then the monster would lose that curio spot, so you could no longer deal extra damage against that same spot. So in this case with Monster Hunter Wilds, you're going to need to create another wound on the monster to then be able to take advantage of it. Though naturally the more experienced hunters will already be used to hitting the monster on the same spot over and over, as it is going to lead to part breaks and KO, and that is going to lead to much more damage. Now on this paragraph right here that states that focus mode will highlight any weak points that have been exposed, I'm wondering if it's going to highlight just about any weak points that the monster has, or if it's going to be something like you break the monster's head, for example, so now that part is exposed, and so now that part is going to be highlighted whenever you enter focus mode. The way that this is phrased kind of leads me to believe the latter rather than the former, although I can totally see it going either way. Now here during the focus strike section we get to see a couple of different weapons. That is first the Greatsword that we already saw, that is the longsword actually, and that is definitely the gun lance. So let's slow it down a little. So we had already seen this Greatsword move, this horizontal slash that deals a lot of damage piercing through the monster, very cool. but then the longsword has this vertical slash where the hunter pulls the longsword downwards and then pulls it back upwards, doing a couple of slashes. This is likely going to be a very effective tool to target a specific monster part. Just because it is purely a vertical attack means that you're going to be able to fully take advantage of the longsword's range, and just look at that awesome animation. And this is definitely the gun lance. You get to see this bulky shield right here that has this very steampunk aesthetic to it. It has a very rough look, kind of like it has been patched together. And I do like seeing these blue stripes on the shield as well. And that is definitely the gun lance. You can kind of see that this part right here kind of looks like a worm stake that the hunter is attaching to the monster. You can kind of see that he lets go of it at some point during this animation. Right there, it kind of like detaches itself from the rest of the gun lance. Now, does that explode or does it stick to the monster and you then get to shell against it to deal additional damage? We don't quite get to see it here. Let's see. Does it explode finally? They cut it away to the Greatsword at the end. We don't get quite to see if that actually explodes. And hey, you get to see the same blue stripes on this side of the shield as well. But for the very brief amount of time that we got to see the longsword as well as the gun lance, it looks like they are going to be pretty fun weapons. At least these animations look very cool. And then there's this focus strike, which looks absolutely beautiful. Let's take a look at it one more time. It kind of looks goofy here because it kind of looks like the hunter partially missed the attack, but still it manages to connect with the Shatacabra's arm on the side, and as the hunter goes through it, it's going to do this powerful slash that is going to destroy that wound and KO the Shatacabra. So it looks like it's going to be a little bit more lenient than I would have expected with the hitboxes, which maybe is going to be a good thing. Now finally, let's move on to the Greatsword trailer. Look at that beautiful weapon. That is such a sick art. A weighty weapon with slower movements and attacks, but each blow packs a powerful punch. Nice. Get the shoulder tackle back, the horizontal slash as well. Get the block as well. Ooh, that's a beautiful counter, followed by that attack with the slinger. Use focus mode to target the monster's wounds and weak points. And that is the horizontal slash again. Oh, and that's the clash that we saw in the trailer. And an attack to the butt, followed by a TCS to round out the trailer. Awesome stuff, but there's a couple of details here that I do want to point out. So we already saw that the Greatsword is going to be able to change directions with focus mode. They don't quite highlight it here in this trailer, but it's something that we now know. Now this counter is something that I'm very interested in. It's something that we already saw in the previous trailer, but just look at this amazing animation where the hunter does the uppercut, uses the slinger to propel himself forward to the monster, then performs a horizontal slash followed by a vertical slash. Now, if we go back here on this counter, which I'm guessing you're going to need to time it right to be able to actually be a counter, you can see that when they cut from this part of the trailer to whenever the hunter is going to perform the counter, the hunter already has the red outer glow around him, which means that he was either already preparing this counter attack by going into focus mode and performing a focus strike, or the hunter was focusing a different move. And while the hunter was charging that other move, he saw that the Doshiguma was lunging at him, so he went for the counter. Like so. Kind of like you have the counter in Sunbreak where you're able to use it in the middle of your charged attacks, maybe it is going to work similarly to that. And here you get to see the awesome clash between the Doshiguma and the hunter. We still don't quite know how these are going to work out for other weapons, but given that we're going to be getting a different trailer for each different weapon with each passing day, we're going to find out very soon how these are all going to work. Now this part right here is the sneak attack that I mentioned in the previous video, where you are able to hit the monster while they are unaware of your presence and you're going to deal increased damage. And likely doing this with the Greatsword being one of the weapons with the highest damage that you can do with a single attack, it's going to result in a ton of damage. And right there we end the trailer with a very powerful TCS, beautiful, you love to see it. Now if we turn our attention to the website, there's also a couple of things that I want to point out. As you can see right here, the developers have placed these silhouettes that we're going to be seeing with each different trailer that are going to showcase not only a different armor set, but also the design of the weapon that the wielder is going to have. So let's go through all of them one by one, because I think that you can actually infer from this image some of the returning monsters that we're going to be seeing in Monster Hunter Wilds. Now this right here is going to be the longsword. I don't quite recognize the design of this armor set nor the design of the longsword itself, but given that the longsword is going to be the next weapon that is going to be showcased, it's not like we need to wait a long time to be able to find out. Now here you have the sword and shield, and that is very naturally the Rathalos sword and shield. You can see the Rathalos shield right there, and you can even see the Rathalos helmet very easily. Now as for the dual blades right here, it's kind of hard to make out the shape of this exactly. However, if you go into inspect element, you can actually open up that image separate. And here you can see that the dual blades have this bone-ish visual to them, but more importantly, the armor set has a very distinct mohawk on it with some fur on the back, and it instantly reminded me of the Kongalala armor set. So when we compare the two side by side, please tell me I'm not crazy and this actually looks like the Kongalala armor set. Does that mean that we're actually going to be getting Kongalala back in this game after all these years? That's honestly looking like it's going to be a thing. Now as for the rest of the weapons, this one on the right side is clearly the Insect Glaive, and it kind of looks like the Engine F set that you can see right here with the feathers on top as well as on the helmet, but it also reminds me of the Great Jaguar's armor set because again, this little detail on the back of the helmet and also on the back of the Hunter, so I'm not 100% sure on this one just yet. This one, the gun lens, is very clearly the Ingot armor set. You can clearly see the distinct shape of the helmet, so that is definitely what that one is going to be. And I can't quite make out what the rest of these armor sets are going to be. This one kind of looks like the Iron set, although I'm not quite sure about it. And it's likely the Heavy Bogan because you can see the shield on the weapon. And the Hunting Horn set kind of looks like the Nergigante set, but if it were Nergigante, I don't think that they would put him here among all of these weapons. So I don't think that it's going to be him. It might actually be a brand new monster with a brand new armor set. But also another detail that we can gather by looking at this is that by going into inspect element, you can actually find out the exact order in which we're going to be getting all of these weapons, which is the traditional order in which they go about them. So the first one is naturally the Greatsword, after that it's going to be the Longsword, followed by the Sword and Shield and the Dual Blades. After that we get the Hammer, then the Hunting Horn, followed by the Lance, and then the Gun Lance. Rurikan is going to be happy about this. The 9th weapon is going to be the Switch Axe, and the 10th weapon is going to be the Charge Blade. The 11th weapon is going to be the Insect Glaive, and then we get into the ranged weapons, starting with the Light Bogan, the Heavy Bogan, and finally the Bow. These 3 short videos got us a lot of information about the upcoming game, and as we're going to be getting more of these videos with each different day, I'm going to be doing in-depth coverage on all of them. Now I do want to ask you guys a question. Do you want me to make a full in-depth breakdown for each of the different weapons, or would you rather wait until we have a lot of them so I can cover them in bulk and maybe showcase some of the more hidden details? Because I don't think that I can quite squeeze 20 minutes out of a single 1-minute video. And I also have a lot of Elden Ring videos that I have prepared for you guys that I'm still working on, so I do want to know what you guys think. With that being said, tell me how much you guys are excited for Monster Hunter Wilds. I know that I am, and with Gamescom being around the corner, we're going to be getting a ton of new gameplay that I'm going to be analyzing for you guys, and honestly I just cannot wait for this game to release. My name is Dark Hero, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, happy hunting!